Hello writer friends, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Kimberly, writer and teacher, and today we are going to be talking about the steps you take to start writing a book. I am so sorry that this video is coming out so late. Last week I had some terrible technical difficulties, but I have a new mic now. Let me know in the comments below if you can tell any difference with this new mic. And this week was my 13th wedding anniversary, so this video was definitely going to be a little bit late. Now, before we get started, smash that like. And if this is your first time here, please subscribe and ring that bell. I post new videos on Wednesday. In this video, we are going to talk about the steps you take to start writing a book. Now, these are going to all be interchangeable, but this is where you would want to start when you're thinking about actually writing a book. Now, let's get right into it. Now, if you've ever considered writing a book, you're probably filled with questions about how to get started. How do you begin your writing? What if after the first few chapters you dislike what you've written, and do you just get an editor or designer? Do you just trash everything you wrote in the beginning and start all over fresh? This guide will give you some tips on where to start from the beginning to the end. Now let's get right into it. Number 1, decide what you want your book to be about, otherwise known as plot. To be successful, you need to decide what kind of book you want to write and who you are marketing the book to. This is going to matter as far as your audience. A romance novel isn't going to work for somebody who you're targeting that is a CEO. So you want to do research into the different types of genres as well as who typically reads them. Now, when it comes to like YA, new adult, and adult, those ones are obviously interchangeable as a lot of adults actually read YA. So it's natural that an older audience could be reading a younger audience. So an audience that typically reads romance novels isn't going to be interested in something that is geared towards investments. For example, an investment book should describe the common pitfalls or even list historical market data for past recessions. Both statistics are things an investor would find interesting and valuable. So it's okay to ask others for help if you've never written a book before. Then getting feedback from your work can help keep you on track. Whether this means having someone else proofread your chapters as you go along or showing your work to a particular writing group or critique group, either way, you want to have people reading your books to give you a little bit of feedback as to what is working and what isn't. Number 2, brainstorm, also known as info dumping. So when you're struggling for ideas, there is no shame in starting with what ifs. What if can kickstart your imagination by writing all about your thoughts and your actions of what if blah, 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 blah. What if this happened to my MC? Things like what ifs, as well as just jotting down your ideas early in, can help really spark and let you see things on the page. A lot of times writers will think that they can just go along and remember everything, but I guarantee you that's not exactly beneficial. And I say that because your mind isn't going to remember every single thing that you are dumping out of your mind to try and come up with the scenes and such. When you start with what ifs, it allows your brain to try and see what could happen if you use that what if. You can also take inspiration from other movies and other franchises, but just keep in mind of copyright, not to copy them, but you can also spark some interest in some of the elements that might be in some other type of books. Keep in mind though, everything has been done before, so it matters upon setting your own spin into whatever you are deciding to write. Number 3, make an outline. Now, this might contradict a lot of what I tell people as far as, because I'm a pantser, so I don't outline everything in my novel. Most of what I outline is just the main aspects of what need to actually happen for myself. But there's a lot of people who really benefit from outlining. It kind of goes along with, you can't plan a trip without knowing where you're going, right? I mean, that kind of makes sense. So for that reason, a lot of authors will outline their book with everything that they want to include as far as scene-wise, and then start chronologically putting them where they think that they need to go to fit their plot. This doesn't work for everybody, as I have mentioned in my previous video, which I will link in the description below, that not everybody can benefit from outlining. It just doesn't work for everybody. So as a new writer, finding your writing style is what's going to really help you. When it comes to a writer's style, outlining and pantsing are two very different types of style. Now, there's a lot of people who pantsing works very well. Like, I mean, we can list off all the people, but obviously everyone's first go-to is Stephen King. He is the number one pantser that a lot of people are very familiar with. But there's also a lot of authors who benefit greatly from outlining. And by outlining, it kind of gives you the understanding of, okay, so in chapter 2, I need to write yada, yada, yada. And then at the first pinch point, it allows you to go, oh, I'm supposed to be writing the plot twist here. Something like that gives you the ability to be able to know exactly where you're headed for your book. But again, if you're just not that type of person, it is okay to just write and continue writing. It is important to know where you're headed though for your story. So if you are a pantser, I do suggest you watch my video about pantsing, because it will help with some ideas of understanding the themes and where you should be going when it comes to a plot. A plot needs a beginning, a middle, and an end, and with an outline, you're able to give yourself those plot points of where you're going to be needing to write what. But keep in mind, if that's not working for you, you can try pantsing and allowing your mind and your story to kind of develop in itself. Sometimes just outlining won't work for everybody. One of the best ways that people are able to outline is through Milanote. Milanote works really well for that. I will link down in the description below so that you can try Milanote for free. They do have a paid version where you get more boards or something like that, but this one, they do have a free version, so check it out. It does help let you see things. They can color code them. Go ahead and give it a try. Number 4, write the first draft. Once you've sketched out your ideas, it's time to start writing. This part is also what a lot of people call the easy part. You're just telling the story. The first draft is purely a writing exercise, okay? What a lot of writers do is they get hung up in the first draft thinking that it really needs to be perfect. And I can guarantee you right now, it won't be. I'm gonna save you some time. The first draft will never be perfect. Nothing you can do for your first draft will make it perfect. This is why everybody will tell you your first draft is going to be icky. It's not going to look nice. It's not going to have everything sounding where it needs to sound. And this is the reason that a lot of writers can't complete a draft. They really get hung up in the fact that their first draft smells like a stink pile of shit. They just can't get past that. And we struggle with a lot of doubt as a writer. It is something that we can't escape. Self-doubt is something that just comes along with us because we're reading it, and as our worst critics, that is why we cannot go, gosh, this is perfect, because it's not. Let's just be honest. So I'm not trying to discourage you in any way. I'm just simply stating that when it comes to your first draft, try to understand that it's going to look really bad. And that's not an issue because you can always clean things up later. The problem is you can't clean up a blank page. You also can't clean up an idea in your head that you've been thinking and building up on and deciding, well, I guess I'll just write it later, or I think that I'll wait until I have a better idea, or until I do X, Y, or Z. None of those things are going to help you because the first draft is never going to look and feel like a complete book. The reason why is because the process of getting past the first draft is probably one of the bigger hurdles, with the exception of some of the ones I'm coming up with here in a second. However, let yourself write poorly. I know that that sounds really bad, but give yourself permission to write poorly in the beginning. Skip over the sections where you feel stuck or lost and come back to those when you have a little bit of a fresher mind. Don't force anything when you're writing. You can just make yourself keep writing, because when I have writer's block, that's what I do. I just keep myself writing. It's probably going to be trash anyway, but you got to get used to throwing work away as a writer. You might end up not using something. And so when it comes down to, well, it took me this long to write this. Well, a lot of times that scene could just be deleted and may never ever make it into your book. So think about those things when it comes to the first draft. A lot of times in the first draft, there's a lot of telling and very little showing, which is normal. And allow that to happen. Allow your mind and your hands to just do what they do and write. Number 5, edit, edit, edit. Yes, you need to edit and revise. You'll see in one of my previous videos that I tell you that there's about 4 rounds of edits that you typically want to be doing. Many people think they can write a book by themselves, and when they get to the editing part, it feels daunting, difficult, they hate it. When in fact, I actually think the editing portion is really great, because it gives me the ability to polish my baby and make it better than what it was before. When you revise and edit, you are taking it from a lower point and making it into something better. That to me is hard to understand about how that could be awful. I guess I don't understand that, but that's okay. I teach my students that there are 4 rounds of edits that you should always be doing. And there are professional editors on places like Readsy, but we'll get into professional edits in just a little bit. Now, on these 4 self-edits, the very first one that you want to do is read your manuscript from start to finish. I say it like that because what will happen with a lot of writers is they'll start reading and they'll see something that they want to fix. Oh, this paragraph could be better. Don't make it better yet. Read your manuscript all the way through. Before you read it all the way through, make a list of the things you envisioned making it into your novel. The reason you want to do this is because as you're reading, you want to see if those things made it into your novel. As small as it is or as big as you need it to be. Whatever the issue or situation you wanted to include in your book that never made it in there, be sure to consider all of these options. You want to make this list and read your manuscript all the way through. You are looking for plot holes, inconsistencies. Was your character's eyes brown on the first page, and then 100 pages later it's all of a sudden blue? People pay attention to these things. Readers pay attention to these things. If you are trying to get an agent, they pay attention to these things. All of the stuff that you think might be so small no one's gonna notice, I promise you they're noticing. The first read through is just reading. Fix maybe a comma splice here and there, maybe a grammatical error because a word is spelled wrong or something, but don't go into hard edits yet. Hard editing is not where you need to be right now. After you complete that first read, look at your list of what made it and what didn't. Rate the ones that you wanted to include as how important they are. Rate whatever your number would be, 1, 2, 3, or 5, however you're going to rate that particular conflict or aspect in your book. Rate it on how important was it for you to make that into your book, but for whatever reason it never made it. Or it did, but it wasn't what you wanted it to be. Some of those things you want to think about because it's going to matter for your second draft. Also be looking for tense changes. I tell people this a lot because you might not realize it, but sometimes a sentence, you'll switch the tenses with a different verb. I imagine he found his clothes. That sentence is, imagine is future tense, found is past. I imagine he found his pants. That sentence completely makes no sense whatsoever. So it's things like that, a tense change like that, you want to look for. Those types of things will matter because it confuses readers and it makes getting through parts daunting. And sometimes it makes it boring to read because you're like, what does this even mean? So think about those things as well. Now you are on your second draft. With your second draft, you want to go through each chapter and start deciding what needs to be added, what needs to be cut. Now, one thing you can do is, if you made an outline, compare your page of the things you want to include to what outline you had. You also can check story structure. The 27 chapter method is a really good method for newer writers. It helps new writers see where certain aspects should be taking place. Keep in mind that during this editing process, this is where you are taking your book from a very basic point, which is the first draft, and turning it into something that is flourished and beautiful. So what you want to do at this point is take those things you wanted to include and look for a place to put them. Also, be honest with yourself. How important is it for some of these things to be in your book, though? When you get into your second draft, the goal is to create a leaner, meaner version of your manuscript while maintaining its core meaning. If there are parts that aren't very clear about what you want to say or how best to say it, there are points where logic doesn't seem to be airtight. Go back and fix them up until everything starts to make sense. This is the next point. You get your book completely revised on how you want it. You go through everything. This is when you're putting it through ProWritingAid. You are checking for everything you possibly can. Now you're ready for beta readers. This is when you think your manuscript is the absolute best it possibly can. It can't get any better than this at this point. You go for beta readers when you think your manuscript is complete. Okay, I can guarantee you that it's not, just gonna be honest. Now, you don't always need a large number of beta readers, but you do need at least 5. Now, depending on if you are self-publishing or going to actually traditional publish, the reason that you need beta readers is that they will give you an early idea of the feedback you are looking at when you ultimately release your book into the world and readers start reviewing it. I'm gonna tell you, readers are not always forgiving when it comes to a review. Readers are oftentimes very blunt and sometimes demoralizing with their reviews. So you want to make sure that you dip your toes in first with beta readers. Beta readers are going to give you the feedback you're probably not going to want to hear. But I behoove you not to get angry with them. Don't yell at them. Please don't call them names or anything like that. You may think I'm crazy for stating it like this, and that I have to actually mention not to get angry and yell at these people, because beta readers are there to actually look for problems in your manuscript. It's not easy for someone to insult our babies. Like, it's just not. And so when they say something you don't really like, please take it in a diplomatic manner and understand that when it comes right down to it, they're a reader, but you have the ultimate end as to whether or not you implement what they say anyway. So if you feel like what they tell you isn't right, you don't think that that is, for instance, if a beta reader says that your MC is coming across as conceited and bitchy when you don't obviously think that. Now, if it's only one beta reader, don't give it too much stock. But if you're getting continued information about the same thing and reports about the same problems, think about what they're saying, because I'm probably going to tell you that the beta reader might be right. A reader is a reader in the end, and how they interpret your book may not be exactly what you were looking for, that kind of interpretation, but that's what they got. So keep in mind, now after you have went through all of your beta readers, they went through your whole manuscript, gave you all the feedback you've got now you are into your third draft, okay? This is when you take all of those things and you implement them if you're going to, okay? After this point, you get another set of beta readers. This is if you're going to continue to the fourth step. Some people won't continue till the fourth step in the editing process, and they'll go with their third draft being their final draft. And that's okay, but your final draft, keep in mind, your final draft is there to make it look like you knew what you were doing the entire time. That not once did you ever have a problem with your scenes, your structure, your plot holes, your character growth, your character arc, your opening and closing of scenes, all of these different things. You're supposed to make it look like none of those things were ever an issue to begin with. This is why I say that you need another round of beta readers, because now your manuscript is spruced up, it's pretty, and you've already had one set of readers take a look at it, give you their feedback. Now you're going to take the feedback that those other readers said and give this to another reader, which is another set of beta readers. Some authors don't want to go this far, and that's okay. However, just keep in mind, after you have taken all of your beta reader critiques as well as ideas and you turn them into your third draft, now you are ready for an editor. This is going to be number 6, hire an editor. If you're planning on self-publishing, it's always important to hire an editor, always. No matter how good you think your grammar is, no matter how much your mom or somebody else edited your manuscript, it can always be polished by an editor. In fact, one of the biggest mistakes I see people make is not hiring an editor. I never suggest for someone to not get an editor. I never suggest that. And the reason why is because an editor doesn't only look for grammar. They look for plot holes and inconsistencies, and they look for character arc and character growth in other areas, and dialogue, and these developmental things that editors are looking for are not the same things that you can see when you stare at your manuscript yourself. You are too close to your work, and unfortunately that leaves you with thinking your work is infallible when it comes to needing an editor. And I do understand editors are expensive, but they're expensive for good measure, because they are taking something and they are making it even better than what you thought they could. $100 an hour, I've seen that. A lot of editors starting there. I don't know if that's still the running rate, but you could definitely take a look at some editors. You won't be disappointed. If you're going to traditionally publish, though, an editor can still help you in a sense, though. Don't shell out thousands of dollars to an editor if you plan to traditionally publish. I don't suggest you do that, because a traditional publisher, a legitimate traditional publisher, will never charge you for their services. They pay you. It's not this, we have a publishing package for you. Don't fall for it. That is vanity publishing, so don't fall for it. A real traditional publisher will never charge you to publish your work, okay? Keep that in mind. The reason that some people will suggest that an author gets an editor if they're planning to traditionally publish is because you can actually get good information as far as development of your manuscript from an editor, but you're probably backing yourself into a corner because you're gonna possibly not end up using that, because if you end up going with a traditional publisher, they'll have rights to be able to change your work, and ultimately whatever you paid to that editor could end up being thrown out anyway. So I would be really careful if you're planning to traditionally publish about getting an editor. Number 7, hire a designer. Now, I don't care what anybody says, your cover is your most important marketing tool. It's the only thing readers see first. I don't care how good your book is. You could be the best writer in the world, but if your cover is shitty, you're gonna have some trouble. Nobody's gonna even open your book if your cover looks run down, faded, homemade, and just like it came right out of your toilet. I'm sorry to say it though, that a lot of writers are releasing really crappy book covers. And I do understand, believe me when I say, I understand finances, okay? I get that you may be really low on money. You just might not even have the resources to be able to publish and get a designer like that or an editor. So I do understand these things, but you're going to have to understand your sales are going to reflect that too. You can't really expect awesome sales if your cover just looks like trash. And it can look like trash for a number of reasons. The Photoshop looks bad, the stock image doesn't look right, it's blurry, it's unreadable, the words don't look right, the writing is kind of strange. For instance, if you have a sci-fi book, flowery cursive is not going to work. Comic Sans, Papyrus, those are really bad when it comes to cover fonts. Unfortunately, a lot of writers don't know that they need to have a good, professional, beautiful looking cover, especially in thumbnail form. Thumbnail form is going to matter because your reader isn't going to stop to click on an ugly cover just so that they can read the back of it. Your cover also needs to reflect its genre. Genre matters. Readers, when they look at a cover, they should be able to say, that's a fantasy book. Oh, okay, that is a romance novel. There are very specific things to look for. Research the market. If you are really that low on finances, Mibleart is probably your best option. They understand the market. Their covers are generally really nice. Keep in mind that just knowing how to Photoshop, being able to use Microsoft Word or Canva is just not enough. The world out there with books is an endless sea of books. Understand that if you don't have a cover that sets you apart from Bob Joe down the street with some beautiful looking cover, but shitty writing, no one's going to end up picking up your book if your cover is crap. So please keep in mind that. And when you're sitting there complaining about your sales, look at your book cover and ask yourself, is your book cover really that attractive? And can you read it? You'll never believe how many covers I see that is literally unreadable. You don't know what it says. The colors on it look weird. I mean, there's just a list of things that could be better but just aren't. Number 8, hire a proofreader. After you've went with your editor, you've sent it off to them, you've gotten your book back, now you are on your 4th draft. You've written everything again. Everything looks beautiful. You are finally done with all of that. You have read your book. You know every single word practically. That's typically how you know you've read it enough, that you know every single word almost on every single page. After you've gotten your book back from your editor, now you're on your 4th draft. You are finally done with your 4th draft. You've done everything you possibly can to make your manuscript better, and you're ready to publish. Now you are ready for the proofreader. Your proofreader is the one who is going to look at your book and read every single word. And this is right before you hit publish. This is one of the best times that you get to go through. Someone else is doing the work for you now. A lot of writers also will just proofread the book themselves, but I'm telling you that doesn't always work. There's things you can't see when it's your own work. I've said it once, I'll say it again. Get a proofreader. Editors miss things too. Editors are not perfect. We are not perfect people. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody misses things. So take the time to get a proofreader. They're really not that expensive. Number 9, start a book launch. Once you've finished your book, there are a few things you can do to help it get off on the right foot and get your name out there as well. Try doing a pre-order giveaway, sending review copies to bloggers in your field, creating a book launch team on Facebook, and promoting yourself to other authors' websites and social media. It's okay if no one knows who you are yet. People will be interested once they see that you've written a new book and they like what they read. A professional author who has already figured out how to write a good book still need to understand how to market themselves and their work. So don't expect readers or buyers to come flocking after your debut release. Take some time before you publish your first book and think about the ways you can promote yourself as an author. And a book launch is a really great way to do this. If you have enough beta readers and you're gaining your author platform pretty well, you can put something out there for people to be on your street team and help get your book out there. Get into stores, get into places where you could do news articles, as well as things like podcasts, the radio station in your local area, Things like that are ways to get yourself out there. But as you can see, I don't have any books on my shelf over here. So I'm gonna need books as well. So if you want me to review your book, be sure to let me know, because I will, but I only review physical copies. Be sure to keep an eye out and let me know if you want me to review your book. Number 10, market, 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 market. Market and market and market some more. Market your book all over the damn place. For starters, you need to learn the basics of marketing and make a plan, especially if you plan to self-publish. Self-publishing is not a bad option. I don't want anyone to think that I'm against self-publishing or that traditional publishing is the only way, because that can't be further from the truth. Traditional publishing is an option, but it is not the only option, okay? People think that traditional publishing is the only way their work holds any kind of merit, and that's not how that works. Writers don't choose to self-publish because it's, oh, I'm just a terrible author, I'm gonna have to just self-publish. It's not like that. A lot of authors who self-publish because they want to. Because they want the difference in the royalties versus what traditional publishers and an agent might be taking on their end. There are very specific business things to consider when it comes to traditional publishing as well as self-publishing. Neither or is better than the other, in my opinion. Both have their cons, both have their pros. Don't consider that one is always better than the other. It is a misconception that you have to be traditionally published to be successful, when that is also ridiculous and absurd. There are so many self-published authors out there who are making a really good living on their work. Now, let me make sure I point out that just because you self-publish doesn't mean the work isn't bad, okay? This is what's funny about it. A lot of people want to make this excuse that how are all of these self-published authors who write like crap making a lot of money? Because they understand marketing. That's it. You can market a really crappy book and be successful. That is possible. Just because it's marketed and they're making lots of money doesn't mean that the work is good. It means that they understand how to market. Now, please don't think I'm saying that all self-published work is bad. That's not true. That just means that some people could be really good. There's some people who could be really good, but their inability to want to learn how to actually write hinders their ability to actually grow. But these people know how to market. So they know how to market a really shitty book. Understand that just because of that doesn't mean that all self-published work is bad. Also understand that just because you're traditionally published doesn't mean that your work is better than Susie Q, who is self-published. It doesn't work that way. You might be better, she might be better. It doesn't really matter as far as who is better where. It matters as to what your readers think, as well as how you perceive your own work. Do you automatically think that your work is just utter crap? Well, your marketing strategies are going to show that. So make sure that you understand marketing. You can take classes on like Skillshare, your local college if you need to. There are YouTube marketing classes that you can watch. There are so many things that you could do to learn how to market that it is, I feel like, an excuse to just come up with something that says, well, I don't know how to market, so I'm not very successful. While it could be true you're not good at marketing, there are many resources out there for authors to get better. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. If any of this was helpful, please subscribe, smash that like, and drop a comment below. It'll help the YouTube algorithm suggest this video to other writers like yourself. Follow me on social media. My links will be down below. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.